It's my privilege to introduce our speaker for today, Pastor Darryn Scheske. Sent by Converge Mid-America, Darryn and Darryn Scheske moved to Indianapolis, Indiana with the dream of planting a church. They had one overarching goal, which is to reach people who don't know Christ, to love people well, and to lead them into a transforming relationship with Jesus and then launch them out to change the world. The realization of this dream began with 17 people in the Scheskes' living room in February of 2001. By October of 2001, Heartland Church held its grand opening and first Sunday morning services in a former computer store at the corner of Interstate 69 and 96th Street. In its first year, the church grew to 300 people in weekly attendance and 88 people were baptized. By Easter of 2005, the church doubled to over 600 people attending weekly. And that fall, Heartland Church launched its first church plant in downtown Indianapolis. Nearly 15% of Heartland Church income went to local church outreach, church planting, and international missions. By 2008, the church launched 3 more churches and gave nearly a quarter of its income to international mission causes. In 2010, Heartland opened its second location at Hamilton Southeast High School. Today, thousands of people attend this multi-site and multi-ethnic church's weekend services in 4 locations around the greater Indianapolis area. And when Helen and I have the opportunity to be in Indianapolis, we enjoy attending Heartland Church as well. To date, Heartland Church has launched 12 additional churches across America. Darryn Scheske is the son of second-generation missionaries. He inherited his love for people while being raised in the islands of the Caribbean. He is a passionate advocate for people to live purposeful, fulfilled lives of compassion and generosity. He's traveled the world extensively, leading efforts to provide sustainable transformation in developing countries like Haiti, Sierra Leone, and India. Recently, at Heartland Church, they celebrated the founding of wells in Sierra Leone that have given fresh water to 250,000 people that heretofore have never had sources of fresh water. We're grateful to Pastor Scheske for his church's welcome to Indiana Wesleyan University. Last year, Heartland hosted a Wesley Seminary course taught by one of our faculty who is a Heartland attender. We believe this is the beginning of a rich partnership between Heartland and IWU. Darryn is also a member of Fisher's Rotary Club, a Rotary International Paul Harris Fellow, and the 2010 Rotarian of the Year. He also serves as the Executive Board of Overseers for Converge Mid-America and as the Regional Director for Church Planting also for Converge Mid-America. He completed his master's degree in ministerial leadership from Southeastern University in Lakeland, Florida. And Darryn, I'm sorry to say this, but our men's basketball team last night just beat Southeastern. I'm not really sorry, but you know how it goes. Darryn and his wife, Laree, have 3 children, Nick, who's married to Abby, and daughters, Jordan, who graduated this past spring from Indiana Wesleyan University, and Lauren, who's a student here now. They make their home in Fishers, Indiana. Will you join me in giving a warm Indiana Wesleyan University welcome to Pastor Darryn Scheske?
President Wright, distinguished faculty and guests and graduates, it's an honor to be with you. Just in May, I was in the audience as a proud father watching my daughter Jordan graduate. And Lord willing, a couple years from now, Lauren will walk across this stage and graduate as well. It's hard to believe that it was 1992 that I walked across a stage like this 27 years ago. In fact, if somebody had told me then what I am doing today, I wouldn't have believed them. For one thing, I thought I was going to be an airline pilot. I didn't make that dream come true. But I was meant to do something that I had never thought about. It's something that Jesus said, "You don't understand now what I'm doing, but later you will understand." And my hope, graduates, is that 27 years from now, today you might be thinking about the next few months, and what you're going to do this next year, but I wonder if 27 years from now that you won't look back over your journey and recognize the hand of God that has guided you to places unknown. In fact, God does have a great plan and a purpose for each one of your lives that you probably can't see today. And he goes before you, and if you'll follow him and do his will each day, he'll lead you to places unknown. And my premise today is that being a world changer is simple. I didn't say that it was easy, but it is simple. It starts with one person, and that person is you. I grew up in some of the poorest countries of the developing world: Haiti, Dominica, St. Lucia, St. Kitts. And when you hear those last places, I just want to assure you that I did not grow up at the resort. I grew up on the other side of the fence. And I took my wife back recently to show her some of the places where I grew up, and she said, "Darryn, you grew up in poverty." And but we never felt that way. I never thought that at all. In fact, I was raised in poverty, didn't know it, because I was raised in an atmosphere of compassion. There was always people at our table, and my mom could write the book on feeding 20 people with one chicken. Frugal, yes, but not poor. There was always something to give to a stranger or to a friend or even an enemy. In fact, I saw this played out as a young child, where over a year, a man began attacking my father on the radio and television, challenging him to public debate. His version of truth didn't have room for where he was coming from, and in the small island nation where we lived, it was very painful. My father tried to work it out, but he didn't want to talk, and this went on for quite some time. And then in 1977, Hurricane David swept through that island and devastated that little country. It was the most powerful hurricane to go through the Caribbean in 100 years. And that raged through the night. It took part of the roof off of our home. But in the crack of dawn, my dad grabbed his tools after he'd secured our place, put them in the truck, and he took me. And the first place that he went, as he went to seek people to help, was the home of his antagonizer. And there for the next day, we moved debris, picked up trash, recovered what was left of his destroyed home. And all day we moved that around, and then the next day went back and did it again. On the third day, this man showed up at our home with tears in his eyes and asking my father, "Why would you do this for me after all that I've done to you?" And I'll never forget how my dad reached out and put his arm on his shoulder and says, "Well, because you're my brother in Christ. We're a long way from home, and we're all we've got. We should take care of each other." And I literally watched the atmosphere change, the climate change that happened in this man and his family. It rippled out across the city and ultimately opened the door of that little island nation. So, poor, never. That day I felt like I was part of the greatest family in the world, and we were actually changing the world. And I came here today to tell you at a time when we need to hear it the most, that you are the architect of your atmosphere. That the atmosphere that you create can change the environment, the climate of every room that you walk into. And the world is desperate for people like that. This past week in Richmond, Indiana, just another school shooting occurred. It's the second this year in this part of Indiana. A few weeks ago it was Thousand Oaks, California. The shooting at the synagogue in Pittsburgh. And just all of this in the last 6 weeks. Dr. Martin Luther King said years ago that when you see events like this taking place, unrestrained hate, he said the real reason was spiritual poverty. And underneath a veneer of success and smiles and busyness, we have no idea what's really going on inside the homes of people these days. People are suffering, teenagers, adults, parents alike, scared and afraid, employees and employers wondering what to do. And the only answer to spiritual poverty has always been sacrificial compassion. God so loved the world that he gave. And that's still the truth today, and you have the opportunity to create an atmosphere. It was just 5 years ago, Michael Hill entered DeKalb Elementary School outside of Atlanta, dressed in black, carrying an AK-47, 500 rounds of ammunition, and he began firing in that school. And it would have gone the way of all of these others that you've read about or heard about, except that Michael met a remarkable young woman, a Christian, named Antoinette Tuff, the school clerk who made the 911 call as the terrifying situation unfolded. At first, she considered making a run for it like everybody else, but in a moment of pure courage and compassion, she decided to stay and talk to him. And in the most incredible moment of the 911 tape, she told this young man, and I quote, "It's going to be all right, sweetie. I just want you to know that I love you, okay? I've got a son that's multiple disabled. I tried to commit suicide last year after my husband left me. We all go through something in life, and we're not going to hate you, baby. I love you, okay?" And she changed the atmosphere. Her compassion led him to surrender peacefully to the police, and no one was injured. You see, one act of sacrificial compassion followed by a second act creates an atmosphere that starts a ripple of compassion that will change your home, change your workplace, change your community. It's what's always changed the world. And you have the power to create that. In this atmosphere, especially as you go into the world and as you lead, when you create this atmosphere, people will innovate and they will launch new initiatives and they will be creative and solve problems and generate resources that you know nothing about. They will give and they will contribute far more than a job description demands or a paycheck requires. People you don't even know will want to help you to succeed. And this attitude or this atmosphere will always be tested. As Dr. Wright mentioned, we're very involved in a little country of the world called Sierra Leone. How that happened was as our church began to grow and we were trying to build our first facility, turn an old computer store into a church, and the church was excited and growing, and we managed to save and call people to give, and we'd raised $150,000. We were so proud and so excited that we could begin to do work. And right at that moment, Dr. Joanne Lyon of World Hope International took me to Sierra Leone to see the drilling of water wells in a country that had been devastated by 10 years of civil war. And the machine that we were supposed to watch as we stood there, it puff of smoke and it made a horrible sound and it just fell apart. And I asked, "What's it going to take to fix that?" They said, "You can't be fixed. We have to buy a new one." "How much will that cost?" And they said $150,000. And my heart sank because I felt God say to me, "That's exactly why I brought you here." And then I said, "Get thee behind me, Satan," because that couldn't have been God. But I went back to my leaders with this burden on my heart saying, you know, it's 2008 and the economy has crashed around us. We're going to need a miracle. But you know what? We can be these people's miracle right now. For us, it's just a delay. We can be the miracle today. And it was a unanimous decision on our leaders. We gave that $150,000, and we decided to delay our capital campaign so that we could bring that first drilling rig machine to the people of Sierra Leone. What followed after that was nothing short of a compassion explosion. We were going to need a miracle. Well, what was happened next, we thought we would help hundreds, but hundreds came to help us. Partners flocked to join us. Rotary International gave the largest grant in its history, and in 10 years, millions of dollars have been given, and today, 250,000 people in this little country have access to clean water. All I want to say to you is that you are the architect of an atmosphere, and what will you create? Because you will be blown away when people encounter a real environment of compassion. And I just hope this leaves you with hope today. In the last few weeks, I've been gathering with a group of new friends. I've gathered with imams and rabbis, all from central Indiana. I'm not a big fan of interfaith, pretending that all roads lead to the same God. They don't. But I'd said this to them when we were gathered. Again, let's face it, we have irreconcilable theological differences. Now that that's out of the way, why don't we talk about how we can leave this world a better place for our children? Because the world that we create is the world that we will leave for them. And so we have so many values in common. I think of my friend Muzaffar, and a Muslim imam who has incredible children that he's raised. And I said, let's work together so that we can create opportunities for parents and youth in our community. I think they would love to see two good friends who are so different yet so obviously care for each other, sitting down, having this conversation. I think they'd be amazed. And I think the world needs to see this so badly right now. And so we're working hard together, not trying to blend faiths, but so that multiple faiths can have a seat at a table, so that we can change our world. We call ourselves the Multi-Faith Alliance for Compassion. Imams, rabbis, and pastors, right here in the heartland, where I'm saying this is where peace grows. And we're gonna make a difference for future generations. And because we follow God, we don't know where he's taking us, but I do believe that he has conversations already lined up for us to have. And in that moment, I will be able to respond and give witness of the hope that I have and do it in a gentle and respectful way. It's already happening. When the shootings happened in Pittsburgh just a few weeks ago, and I called my rabbi's friends and went to visit with them, as I prayed with one, he looked at me afterwards and he said, when you pray and when you look in my eyes, I see the eyes of God. And it truly touched my heart. I just want you to think about the world you're about to head into, the ugliness and the unkindness, and you have the ability to change the atmosphere of every room that you walk into. So keep following God and keep your heart soft and make the difference for someone every day. That's your purpose, and watch where God takes you. Being a world changer is simple. I didn't say it was easy, but it's simple because it starts with you, and I invite you to go change your world. Thank you very much.